Good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're discussing the future of business. Hint, it's retention. We have a special guest, Alyssa Nolte, to help us with the discussion. CEO of TruVue and customer success visionary, Alyssa's journey from scaling startups to leading churn prediction analytics at TruVue provides her with a unique perspective on what it takes to retain clients effectively. But before we bring Alyssa on, let's go around the room and introduce everyone. And while we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, so audience participation is highly encouraged. Right. With that, Adam, would you kick us off, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm enjoying what possibly could be the last day of good weather in this country before winter properly lands. So
both of them have hit?
Yes, first and last day of good weather this year. It's absolutely beautiful out there.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome. Bertrand.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bertrand Godillot. I am the founder of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA Ignite partner. We're creating conversations for customers.
Excellent. Thank you very much and welcome. Tracy, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Calling in from 7 a.m. where I am. So it is morning and it's still dark outside. So I don't know what kind of day it's going to be yet. But it has been feeling rather fall over in Calgary. I'm Tracy Borison, founder of TLB Coaching, also a proud partner of DLA Ignite, where we're all about making marketing work for you based on what you wanted to do. And I'm super excited for the conversation today.
Excellent. Thank you. And Tim.
Welcome, everybody. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. We have a beautiful day, autumnal day here in London. I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And myself, I am Rob Durant. I am the founder of Flywheel Results, a proud DLA Ignite partner, and I help startups scale. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Alyssa Nolte. Her approach to customer success combines data-driven insights with actionable strategies, and she will help us understand why and how businesses can adopt a retention-first mindset and why that's essential for long-term success. Let's bring her on. Alyssa, good morning.
Hi, Alyssa.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Alyssa, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
I am Alyssa Nolte. I'm based in Iowa, a little town called Cedar Falls that you've probably never heard of, but we're about 4 hours west of Chicago, and that's what I usually tell people. I am an accidental serial entrepreneur. I kind of fell into entrepreneurship and then along the way have found really incredible people who are doing incredible things. And my goal in life is to build cool stuff with cool people. So I'm excited for this conversation today.
Excellent. As am I. Alyssa, let's start with a foundational question. What is driving the shift from focusing on customer acquisition to retention?
Churn is the #1 growth killer. If you think about it, if you're losing all of your customers or losing a significant proportion of your customers, all you can do is replace those customers and then get more in order to grow. And that seems like a very obvious, thing that we all think about. I was actually awake early this morning, kind of getting ready. I was worried I was going to miss my alarm because it's also a little bit early here. And so I'm panicking about missing my alarm. And I remembered a story about when I was a new mom, and I had a sleep noise app, those ones that play white noise to help your baby sleep. And I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I remembered that after 2 hours, it makes a really loud alarm of like, hey, everybody, pay for this app. It's over now. And your free trial was over. And you can imagine as a new mom, like the rage that I felt when that woke up my baby. And I was thinking about that because my immediate next reaction was to uninstall the app and go pay for a $35 dedicated white noise machine. Not only did they lose my business, but I left a 1-star review. I told anyone who would listen that this app woke up my baby, and then I spent my money elsewhere. All they would have had to do is think about me as a retention prospect rather than a conversion prospect, and I probably would have paid their $4.99 a year for their app. But instead, they drove me somewhere else. And so that mindset, as we are thinking about how we build relationships with customers, is less about transaction and more about value. And if you do that well with your customers and you retain them, acquiring them is going to be twice as easy too.
So, how can organizations better understand and maybe even predict customer churn?
I think it really comes down to understanding your ideal customer, who is buying from you and what problem are they trying to solve. One of the things that we started doing a couple of years ago was putting less focus on only the decision maker or the champion, the person who is actually writing your checks, and really looking at the value you're bringing to the organization as a whole and listening to the users or the people that are actually engaging and deriving value, because you might not even know who they are, but they're quietly influencing whether or not you're going to get that renewal. Your decision maker moves on, gets a new job, but the majority of those influencers are still there and still either loving your product and are going to demand that it stays, or hating your product or your service and quietly advocating that they move on and find a new opportunity when the contract ends.
How do you connect with that group?
It's a fine balance, right? Because nobody wants to take a survey. Nobody wants to get a million phone calls from your customer support team or from your service bot, right? So really taking the opportunity to ask the right time in the right way. So we've done all kinds of things. We've done traditional surveys like you've gotten from your give us a 5-star rating or tell us how we're doing kind of surveys, but also really thinking about point in time, really focused questions. One of the questions I like to ask people that really derives a lot of information: in 3 words, how would you describe your experience with us? Not very hard to do, right? But you get a lot of value from that. So I'd ask that question for one of my clients for Salesforce, and I might hear things like innovative, big, difficult, right? And those can tell me a lot of things about how people are experiencing their experience with Salesforce.
What you said about your baby and the white noise app is really interesting, because it shows a massive disconnect, doesn't it, between how the company were perceiving the interaction that you were having with their product and how you were perceiving that interaction.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the challenges that we often see in so many different interactions is that the seller or the company is incapable of truly ruthlessly putting themselves in the buyer's shoes. So what they believe is what they want to believe, or what they choose to believe, or a very twisted view of reality. And this would be a prime example of that, wouldn't it? You know, the very purpose of you downloading the app was undermined by what they considered to be quite a logical next step.
Right. Give us the upgrade, right? We'll put this irritant in place and you'll pay to have the irritant removed. But in reality, they could have just offered additional value, or even just reached out to me in an altruistic saying, hey, you've been using this app for free for 30 days. It costs us money to produce this app. If you want to keep using it, pitch in and help out, right? There's ways to add value or build relationship that don't involve adding to the problem you're trying to solve in the first place.
Mm. Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So, what are the biggest challenges that your customers are facing in retention?
I think Adam really nailed it. It's ruthless empathy, truly understanding and sitting in the shoes of your customers and understanding what are you doing that brings value to the table. We sit in these echo chambers and we sit and say to ourselves, our customers, we see the value, right? So of course our customers are going to see the value. But if you don't have a good way of relentlessly understanding what they care about, what brings value to their lives, even if they like you as a person, if you're not bringing value to their everyday, then they're going to move on. At the end of the day, this is business. So I think it's really about relentlessly understanding your customers and finding ways to bring them into the conversation rather than just shouting into the void at them what value you bring to the table.
I think this is super interesting because I'm thinking about how humans experience value and this concept. Well, I love the phrase ruthless empathy. I wrote it down. More people could probably do that. But so often, and I work with a lot of B2B businesses, and a lot of times people think that the value is in the thing, right? The thing that we do, the software, the platform design, the number of hours of access you get to your coach and things like that. We think that that's the value. And then we forget to do the things that actually generate value for the customers, which is, I think, tied into this ruthless empathy, curiosity, like how do we get excited about solving your problem instead of just being like, this is what we do.
Right. And I think there's something that drives me crazy when people ask, like when you say, I'm gonna ask these questions, I'm gonna care about this value, I'm going to have this conversation with you, and then they don't do anything with it, right? There's honestly nothing worse. If you're not going to do anything with the feedback you're getting, don't even ask, because you truly
This is what
don't
I say
care.
about market research all the time too. Just don't even bother.
Just don't even bother. If you're not going to do anything about it, don't even bother. Don't even ask, because nobody likes to have their opinion asked for and then have it totally ignored. That's almost worse than not asking at all.
Agreed. And
But
Tracy, it's funny you say
companies...
that's what you say about market research. That's what I teach my marketing students about market research. Adam, you were saying.
Yeah, I was going to say. So how do companies reposition this in their own psyche? Because we all have pressures in our operational position within an organization, whether that's selling or product development or customer retention or customer whatever. We've all got our issues, and actually this is more fundamental than your role within a company. This is about how the company interacts with the world and what it's trying to achieve, and we have always tried to do the right thing. We recognize that we are there to help people and to empower people and to educate people and to handhold them through the process of developing the skills that they need. But I can't help thinking that the overwhelming majority of companies see you, the prospect, as a number, not as an individual. You're one of however many numbers we're dealing with today. And to actually give you value, like you said about, I'm going to ask you for feedback and then I'm going to listen to your response and I'm going to do something with that. That's a massive, massive shift for most companies, isn't it? Where actually, I don't care about you, Alicia, because I've got Rob and Bertrand and Tim and Tracy as well. So you're just 20% of the customer base. And actually, this requires a huge amount of growing up and humanizing, doesn't it, within most organizations?
There's literally no other way to say this other than absolutely yes, emphatically yes. It's a culture thing. It comes down to how do we view the people that we serve, not the numbers that we achieve.
But so I have a theory from a marketing perspective anyway about culture, in that like your culture is your culture. And the only way to adjust it really is to bring in new people who bring a different vibe and energy and culture with them. There's been a lot, actually having a conversation earlier this week with a friend of mine about the concept of culture transformation. And I think an organization has its lived values, and then it has, from a marketing perspective, you could write whatever you want on your website, but then the likelihood of attracting the wrong clients, the wrong employees is very high. And so the best thing people can do is be open and honest and transparent about their culture as part of this. And so Are we talking about a possibility of an organization who absolutely doesn't care about people making a transformation in this arena, or is it more about people who are noticing that and maybe it's new people to the organization who are noticing that we're not taking care of our customers, and now this group of people wants to take care of our customers, so we're going to do this? What are your thoughts on the actually shifting the culture, or is this serving specific cultures?
I think that 10 years ago, you could get away with treating your customers like numbers, but the world is different. And I think the only answer is adapt or die, because we have so much ability to share our opinions. Think about the number of businesses that have been taken down by a single TikTok video of one person who had one bad experience, right? And it's unfortunate because it's going to be very hard. But I firmly believe that businesses that don't adapt to a retention mindset will not be the titans of industry that they are today. So adapt or die is kind of my response to that.
I have a kind of contrarian question to ask and related to that. But before I ask that question, I want to bring on some comments from the audiences. First of all, Andrew Slesser checks in.
Morning, Andrew.
Hey, Andrew.
Good morning.
We have a comment from Robert Matson, also a longtime friend of the show. The retention advantage, cost effectiveness, agreed. Good to hear from you again, Robert. We have a comment from, and I apologize in advance, but I'm going to try.
It's I care.
I care. Hayden Duplessis. I care says, great topic. Retention is such a key factor in sustainable growth. Looking forward to hearing Alyssa's insights on how businesses can prioritize customer loyalty and long-term value. Excited for this discussion.
Thanks,
Couple of other comments. We have Matt Sims saying, way to go, Alyssa, making so
Thanks,
much
Matt.
sense. And
Thanks, Matt.
Tolisha, I'm going to get
Tolisha.
it. I promise
Just go
you.
with it, Rob.
Tolisha Joseph says, I love this. How we manage customer expectations, addressing and resolving conflicting ideas, identifying what advocacy sounds like for our company, and creating engaging environments are areas that can impact retention. Most definitely. And thank you all for the comments, and keep them coming. But I want to come back to what you said, Alyssa, that essentially it's about retention or dying. Is attention to acquisition or attention to retention just cyclical? Are we in an economy right now that requires it, but once things start getting good again, well, we can ignore it?
I think that, like everything, if you think about that pendulum swinging, right? We are seeing a swing towards retention right now as the primary focus. But like all things, the best lies in the balance. And I think as we focus on the explosive growth that we've seen over the last several years, especially in tech companies, which is where most of my expertise lies. While they had explosive growth, they grew maybe too fast, maybe it was unsustainable. Now they're swinging back towards the retention pendulum, and it's probably going to swing too far, right? We're going to swing all the way back to retention, but we need to settle in the middle. There is a balance. The best way to sustainably grow, and I think someone said it in one of our comments, is about balancing retention with acquisition and making sure that both get the support and value and priority that they deserve.
Alyssa, just for our understanding, of course, we talked about, adapt or die, I mean, kind of retain or die. But from your experience, how bad is the average? So if I'm average, how many customers am I losing?
I'm going to use a really big number, and then I'll go back to easier to digest. In the US alone, businesses are losing more than $1 trillion in customer revenue that they don't have to. That is that is avoidable churn. And so if you think about that, if your business loses 10 to 15% of customers that you don't have to lose, right? It's not an acquisition. They didn't shut down. They didn't, stop using your product entirely. 10 to 15% of your customers are switching to someone else. and you don't have to lose them. And in the US, that accounts to trillions of dollars of lost revenue, a number we can't even fathom. And so there is a huge impact. If I have to make up 15% of my customers and then gain another, 30, 40, 50% in order to even grow, I'm working twice as hard when I don't have to.
So what is the big mistake then that everybody's making? Because clearly this is not like Tim's company has got this little button that I need, and that seems like a really cool thing, so I'm going to swap to Tim now. So this is fundamental habitual mistakes that are being made if we're talking about that volume of revenue that's being missed. So what are the top mistakes that you see organizations making?
Lack of alignment and lack of self-awareness. When I stand up there and promise our product can do these 3 things and I can't deliver on it because either my team, I didn't have the awareness to realize we couldn't deliver on it, or my team wasn't aligned on the same page in terms of what we were capable of, or I was just straight up being dishonest and trying to win the deal. And it didn't matter what the reality was. I was going to make a promise, I was going to close the deal, and we'd worry about renewal 12 to 18 months when that time came. And so that short-sighted approach to winning at all costs rather than winning sustainably, we really need to make sure we understand how people are driving things forward and making sure that our promises align with reality so that when it comes time for renewal, they've seen the value and they got exactly what they were promised. And honestly, maybe even a little bit more, that under promise, over deliver kind of mindset.
I think this is
But
so
surely-
important too, because I say this in all the time about marketing, is that I will not make a promise I do not think we can deliver in marketing, because I'm just working towards breaking the brand experience, which is a ridiculous about this. But I think this is, especially in this like mindset of like, I need to get customers, right? There's a lot of people who have started creating their own businesses. Tech is really easy access now. So like the barriers to entry for new businesses is getting lower and lower, especially for tech. And so if I need to get customers, then a lot of times I will just like try and get anyone that I can from a customer perspective. And they're not talking about that alignment piece. And they're not talking, I think self-awareness in general is underserved in the human population, and can be worked on across all areas. But when we build it that way, and like you said, Alyssa, not worry about retention until 12 months from now. But you're going to be lucky to get to 12 months from now, because what you did is you got a whole bunch of people signed up on a low ticket and or free trial, like your example, right? And you're breaking the experience before the trial's even over. So we're not talking about retention 12 months from now. We're actually talking about retention now. If you want to keep those people for 12 months and you want to be able to show, I don't know, the MRR and ARR and whatever all these things mean, right? Like you have, my brain is saying you have to think about it now to get to that point where you can report on those recurring numbers. But we think we don't have to think about it until the quote unquote renewal term.
I think
is short-sighted.
I think so too. And let's be self-aware too. Not every business cares about retention, right? If you're a one-off, one-time product, then you don't really care about retention. The businesses that I work with are moving into this subscription economy. For goodness sake, HP is now going to have their printer ink on a subscription model for revenue. And so we're seeing this huge move into the subscription economy. And to Rob's point earlier, it might swing back into less of a subscription and more of a one-off. But businesses see the value in being able to project a great annual recurring revenue rather than simply a good top line. And so as we're thinking about how companies treat their customers and moving into the subscription economy, I think that's where we're going to start to see the change. And that's where self-awareness really needs to come in. You as the leader of your organization, whether you are the one person consulting business all the way up to the mega corporations in the Fortune 5, need to decide what kind of company are you going to be, what is your long-term vision, and what are the short-term changes you have to make in order to adapt to those long-term goals.
And so, Alyssa, I have a question about even if you have, like, I have a friend who runs a custom home design agency, right? Usually people only buy one custom home in their lifetime because it's custom to them. But I see value in maybe not retention in terms of like that subscription kind of model, but in these types of industries, your brand reputation is also very important. And I think a lot of the same things go into retention as go into brand reputation. So can you talk about, and maybe it is just alignment and the self-awareness, but what are some of the things that contribute in both of those categories so that even if you have one-off buyers, I mean, like, so for example, I had one kid. I bought diapers for one series of diapers. Right. But like I had the ones I like and I had the ones that I didn't like. And I still talk about the ones that I like, even though I don't use them anymore. So what is the value of creating those brand champions, even in the scenario where there are going to be one-off buyers?
This is actually a very interesting topic when you think about the growth or the detriment of your business. So I love TikTok unapologetically. I spend way too much time on there. And there was this whole story in the last couple of months about a custom wedding dress, right? Beautiful custom wedding dress. And again, something you're probably only buying one time. However, the buyer was very frustrated by their experience. They didn't like the dress. When they got it, it wasn't finished. It was late. She documented it all on TikTok and it blew up. And now this custom wedding dress designer is having to basically defend her brand. And she could have simply said, hey, I messed up. I took on too much work. I am so sorry that this happened. I will refund you or do a partial refund or send the dress back or whatever. Instead, she pretended and acted like nothing was wrong and it was all actually the buyer's fault. And she put all of the blame on the customer. Well, in these days, guys, we have receipts, we have text messages, we have screenshots. And so then it became this whole saga where you have half of TikTok versus the other half of TikTok defending the dress designer and then, blowing up the TikTok of the buyer. And then all of a sudden it comes out that actually it was on the designer. And if she would have just owned up to it, it wouldn't have been a thing. But instead she has millions of people who know her brand for the wrong reason. And so same with my sleep app. I left a 1-star review. I wrote a review. In my postpartum rage, I was very, very upset. It could have been as simple as, hey, this app didn't work for me. But instead it was, not only did this app not work for me, but it woke up the child I just spent 2 hours rocking to sleep. And I've had, a very, very bad experience with this. So it's not just about getting a good referral. It's about protecting yourself from bad ones too.
Alyssa, just
along those lines, Andrew Slesser asks, are companies now treating their customers as disposable, like their products?
I think that they used to. I think that, many, many years ago, especially some of those larger companies, to Adam's point earlier, saw their customers as a number that's easily replaceable. And the sky was the limit and blue ocean thinking, right? Blue sky thinking. And it didn't matter how many customers you lost because there was always the next customer. And I think that is what's changing, is that companies have to give up that disposable mindset and focus on every customer is a customer worth having if they fit our ideal customer profile, especially, but that you might not know who your ICP is. I might say my ideal customer is this person, but discover actually I solve an entirely different problem. So being self-aware and being open and reflecting on what's best for the relationship that I'm trying to build, not what's best for tomorrow's forecast sheet I have to deliver.
But most organizations don't. So you mentioned the subscription economy as being an example of this. So I guess every company wants to tie their customers into a subscription, because I know that you're going to buy ink in the case of HP. I know that you're going to buy ink every year. Now I know when you're going to buy that ink because I'm going to send it to you whether you need that ink or not. Right. And what I see time and again is that some products lend themselves really well to the subscription economy. So Microsoft Office, for example, you buy an annual subscription and then a year later they email you saying, we're about to take the money for another subscription. Are you okay with this? And you go, yes. And then it refreshes. Great. that lends itself very well to it. Equally, on your phone, you think, oh, I would like to have a camera with a bit more control, so I'm going to download this app, and it's $6.99 a month. Every month, it's £80 a year, or whatever the cost is, which is a ludicrous amount of money. And I think that so many organizations are joining the subscription economy based on profiteering on the company, on the customers, rather than saying, does this suit the customer well? Does this suit the product well? You know, it's like that SaaS mindset. We're going to hammer the SaaS mindset into whatever it is you do. Like BMW having that thing where they said, well, every car is going to come with heated seats. And if you want the heated seats enabled, that's a subscription service that's going to cost you $10 a month or whatever. You know, this is madness. And they're building the seats, the heated seats into every car anyway. So to do the right thing by the customer would say, this is an upgrade which comes as standard on every car we do from now on. But no. And I mean, I'm not vilifying BMW, because all of these organizations are trying these new ways. But often, you know, they are, as we would say in this country, putting the cart before the horse. You know, they're not thinking about what's best for the customer. They're thinking about what's best for them. And then they're dressing it up as being, oh, this is for the benefit of the customer. So how do organizations not fall into that trap? Because let's be honest, you know, more money is a very beguiling thing for the company, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Nobody, I mean, we're all here to make money, right? This is business. And so if you have that opportunity to do that and to make that money, that's great. I think it comes down to having a short-term plan with a long-term view. If in the long term, and Rob and I kind of touched on this before the call started, like, don't ask me where you're going to be in 5 years. Ask me what got me to this point today. And think about how you have gotten to this point today and what shifts you can make to continue to grow and outpace the competition. If you fundamentally believe that in 5 years, subscriptions are going to be the way that your business makes money, then absolutely that's how you should prioritize it. But be honest and be focused on how do you make sure that you're still around in 5 years, not necessarily or still at the top in 5 years if you're a too big to fail kind of a company. But sitting here and saying I'm just going to jump on the bandwagon is not going to be a long-term strategy. You need to acknowledge that this is a short-term play and something we're going to do in the short term to make money. And we have weighed the risk benefit of turning this short-term profit for long-term brand perception. And if you've weighed that risk benefit and you've decided it's worth it, then you go ahead and do it if you're not super worried about it breaking your brand over time.
Well, one of the things that always concerns me is the fact that we quite often talk about churn, which is a lagging indicator.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked earlier on, thank you about that, about the fact that we need to be proactive about it. Because kind of if we're measuring churn, the customer's already left. One of the things that I quite often ask companies is, who's allowed to talk to customers? And when we go back to, you know, we talk about and we all pat each other, yeah, we need to talk to customers and things like that. And then when you say, so who can talk to customers? It's, well, sales can. And who else? Well, we don't allow the techies to do that because they're techies, and we don't allow marketing to do that because they're marketing. We don't, you know, and in the end, it's only the salespeople. And salespeople see things through a particular lens, don't they? Which is, how can I sell you something?
Yeah.
So in a way, what we're doing is that we're creating this culture in the organization, which will be through that lens.
You make such an important point.
What can we do cultural-wise and leadership-wise to actually look at, you know, in terms of talking to customers and getting more people talking to customers?
You make such an important point. I worked with a company for a while as a consultant, and the only person who was allowed to talk to them was their account manager. Now, they had a sales team of like 6 people on some of these customers, and only one person gets to have those conversations. And by the way, that person has 25 customers that they're responsible for. And the last thing they want to do is go deal with a closed one deal. Like, I've already closed them. I'm on to the next one I need to close.
I've spent the money.
I've got the money. I have to go get the money now from the other guy. And so having your salesperson or sales team be the only ones that are talking to customers means that you're missing out on those customers that have already closed their deals. They're only focused on the next day, which, no shade to salespeople. I have been for one many years. Like, you need to go close your deal. That's what you're measured on. That's what you're successful on. And so I think it's important to, one, create an unsiloed culture where people share information and you're not incentivizing people to hold things to the best, right? The other thing is, I think you need to create a team whose job it is to have that conversation, empower them to do it, incentivize them to do it, and then incentivize them to share what they've learned in a way that meets the communication styles of the teams that they are responsible to communicate with. To your point, if I'm going to go to a salesperson, I'm going to say, here's some information that you're going to need in 18 months. They're going to say, cool, come talk to me in 18 months, right? But put systems in place that allow salespeople to have the information at their fingertips when they need it in the way that they communicate and consume information. If you're going to deal with the product team, there's a very specific way that you're going to communicate feedback to the product team. Have systems and strategies in place for the people who you've tasked with hearing your customers to then take that information and communicate it in a way that the team that needs to act on it can consume it and will consume it.
Because the conversations that you often have with customers are such that they will say things to you that you won't get, it will not get passed on to you. Salespeople won't pass certain things on to you because of the fact that they only think around, it's binary,
right?
And they're taught to only have money conversations, whereas there's certain things about the product that the person that the customers may be telling you that could have an impact to the whole strategy of the organization. You may be searching for the wrong part of the ICP. The classic example is Slack, which was set up as the Slack company was a company that was a gaming company, and which was a game that was going to be for good, and found out that nobody liked playing it because actually people only like games where they kill people.
Yes.
And what happened was that they built this tool internally where they communicated because it was a fully remote company. And in the end, what they did was that they sold the internal tool rather than the game. But it was only because of the feedback that they had from customers where people were saying, this is a really, really great tool, that they actually went ahead and did that.
Absolutely. I think it's really, really important to create a system in place that reflects the expectations you've laid on the people. So if you paid your salespeople on the number of customer discovery and market research interviews they did, you better believe you'd be inundated with customer feedback and customer discovery. But that's not what you're incentivizing your salespeople to do. So if you're going to incentivize your salespeople to make sales, then that's what they're going to do. And so you need to create systems or put tools in place that will collect that information or organize that information or ask those questions without having your salespeople be involved in it, because you're not incentivizing them. You're not paying them to do that. You're paying them to close deals, and that's what they're doing, and that's what you want them to be doing. So don't ask them to do something for the good of the company if you don't have a plan to incentivize them to do so.
So, Alyssa, we talked a lot about the processes and the roles that you could put in place to actually have a better interaction and better understanding of your customers. What role could technology like AI, if any, play in that retention process?
There's a huge explosion in that right now, and that's I'm not going to go into an infomercial, but that's basically what we're working on over at TruVue, is how do we collect that information without bugging your salespeople or making it harder for them. So there's a huge opportunity, us and many other businesses who are out there trying to leverage tech to get that information. The thing that I fear is we're going to go too far, and it's going to be, robot to human experiences, and we're not going to actually get what we're looking for. So I think the companies that those are available, that is possible, but it's really important to remember that business is human to human at the end of the day, even when you're interacting with an AI or interacting with a tool, and keeping that humanity as much as we can while automating the drudgery of the process.
I think we're all sold on that here.
Good.
Alyssa, Tim had mentioned that churn is a lagging indicator. What are some of the things a business can do to identify possible churn? I'm in particular curious to hear any thoughts you might have regarding what a small business could do. Someone that doesn't have technology enabled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that you can do. We do a lot of work for companies that are doing churn prediction surveys, essentially, or churn prediction research. So it's a process where we're collecting these signals that people put out. But if you're an app, you can do usage analytics, and you can see, are people logging in? Are they using my product in the way they intend? If you're a small business, one of the most powerful and terrifying things you can do if you're like a consulting business is ask the hard questions. Are you getting value from our interaction? Are we providing value? Are we helping you? And really understanding why did they engage you in the first place? What does success look like? And how will I know when I've helped them achieve it? And then constantly checking in order to ask those questions. If you're a small one person, it can be terrifying to ask your customer am I doing a good job? Are you happy? Or is there anything I can do differently? Kind of a question. When I was interviewing for jobs out of college, the question I always like to ask at the end of my interview, which would always stump the people that was on the other side of the table, I would say, based on this conversation and based on this interview, are there any reasons why you think I wouldn't be the best person for this role or the best candidate for this role? And they would look at me and you'd see a little bit of panic in their eyes of like, now I have to either say like, you're the best one, or I have to give you feedback right on the spot. And that would give me an opportunity to address that feedback because I don't want to leave them with a question mark in their mind. So it was my way of putting a period on this interview and saying either I am the one and you're going to admit it to my face, or you're going to give me an opportunity to address your concerns right then and there. And there's going to be no ambiguity between us. And it always took them off guard, but it was a healthy conversation and it gave both of us the right expectations. So I'd encourage you to basically have that same version of that question for your customers. Based on this project, is there anything that you think meant this project wasn't successful or that I'm not the right company to work with you?
If I was interviewing somebody and they were fresh out of college and they asked that question at the end of the interview, I'd give them a job on the spot for just having asked that question.
I got a lot of offers from those kinds of jobs.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Net Promoter Score, NPS?
I have mixed feelings.
Just to explain to everybody, what happens is that you'll use a service, and then you'll get an email that says score us between 0 and 10. Mm-hmm. And then you score them between 0 and 10, and there probably will be some free-form text, and they ask for a comment. That's all you get. And a lot of companies, McKinsey support it. It's a well-known. So what do you think about NPS?
I have mixed feelings on NPS. I feel like NPS is something that overpromises and underdelivers. Does the exact opposite of what we have all sat here and said. You want to deliver great value. At the time that NPS was invented and created, it solved the problem. We needed a simple way to collect feedback quickly and to give us a gut, to validate a gut feel, right? Or to point us in the right direction. However, companies have taken it to the point where they look at the NPS as the golden standard, the perfect indicator of what's going on in your business. And in reality, it was never meant to be that. It was just meant to be an indicator, not a decider. And so I think that people will just have misused NPS to the point where it's not valuable anymore. Because if you ask me how likely I am to recommend a software, I'm probably going to give you like a 7. And that puts me into the promoter category, I think, or close to it. If neutral. I give you an 8, I think I'm in neutral. If I give you an 8, I'm in a promoter, right? But I don't really care that much. What really matters is, have I referred your company? Have I talked about it positively? So we can try to sit here and say my likelihood is an 8, but let's talk about reality. Did I or did I not refer that company? And that's what really matters for companies, is that simple binary, did you or did you not?
Well, I just quickly want to comment on the NPS piece, because I think I trained in NPS. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is that it's a customer service methodology. So what I'm supposed to be using the score for is to understand what is your experience at these different parts of our process, so that I can do something about it. But what it has mostly become is a benchmark.
Yes.
So like, I have a net promoter score of 80, so good job, me. No, the point is to see like, who's a detractor, what's creating that, how can I address that with operational changes, and if I get promoters, how do I engage those promoters, how do I turn them on in the digital sense so that people can see that. And this is the thing, we talked about surveying earlier, right? If you're surveying just to survey, that you don't have the benefit of the thing. But if the intention behind it is to do something meaningful with the information, and you have the systems behind it to do something meaningful with the information, then it can work. But I think, and I mean, I'm not like a number 10 promoter for NPS, but I think it's a lot of times these things, they get misinterpreted, and then in the market they get misinterpreted as they have like marginal value, where if they're implemented properly, they actually can have a lot of value for your organization. If they're implemented poorly, they can have very poor value for your organization. Right. So really the key is this like underlying, the thing that keeps coming back for me is this way of being, right? Like, do I have a corporate way of being in solving problems for people? If we all show up here every day and we're solving our problem for people, how would we do that? What does it look like for the marketing team to solve this problem? What does it look like for the sales team to solve this problem? What does it look like for customer service? What does it look like for product design? What does it look like for delivery? And we're all in the same conversation about what it is we do here. We solve this problem. And yeah, what it looks like for marketing to solve that problem will look different than what it looks like for sales to solve that problem. But that we're all in this together, because no, we're not here just to make a dollar, right? We want to help these people do these things. And it costs X amount of money for them to do those things. But this is what, I don't know. I just keep coming back to this like way of being. And if we can make these decisions based on what we're trying to accomplish, how we're trying to help our customer, then I think at the end of the day, we're not the tactics and the systems and things like, yes, we need them, but they will fall into place if we have that strong enough drive from a beingness perspective.
But I think it all comes back again to that putting yourself in the customer's shoes. So, Alyssa, you said about, you give like a 7 or an 8, which kind of makes you just about a promoter, but have you actually told anybody? And no, I'm a 5 on pretty much everything out there. I'm neither a promoter nor a detractor, because frankly, I don't care. I've bought your product to do a job. It does the job. Okay, well, that's a 5. And the reason it's a 5 is that's why I bought the product. That's my expectation, is that it's going to deliver on this. If it was magical, then maybe I'd be more than a 5. And if it was less than magical, maybe I'll be less than a 5. But fundamentally, it's like when people say, oh, well, you explain to this person what it is that you do, and then they'll go and tell people. No, they won't. They're not going to sell your product, because they're too busy selling their own product to worry about selling your product. Yep. And I think that this idea about it, absolutely about this, is driving, using the Net Promoter Score, using the feedback to actually learn lessons. Back to your first point, Alyssa, which was there's no point in asking for feedback if you're not going to actually adopt that feedback and do something with it. And so often, oh yes, you gave us an 8, therefore you're one of our top promoters, but you've not told anybody about my product or service. So actually you're not a promoter, you're completely ambivalent. Yeah. And I think that so often this boils down to the fact that, I'm passionate about my injection molding machine because I've invented an injection molding machine and that's what I do. So clearly it's the most important thing in the world. But it's not to you because you're making rubber ducks. So the most important thing in the world to you is rubber ducks.
So Adam, Robert Matson asks a question about your guitars. Do you only ever score them 5 out of 10, or do you go?
The ones that I keep, I score more than 5 out of 10. Yeah, but I think that's true for everybody, isn't it? There are products that do more than the product needs to do. So the iPhone, maybe if you're a fan of Apple, the iPhone or the iMac is a good example of that. You're buying it to do a purpose. It does more than what it's supposed to do because it's a thing of beauty and it just works and it's really easy. And the same is true if you smoke a Zippo cigarette lighter. You know, it's simple, but it's the best way of lighting a cigarette. And, you know, all of these different products that do more than it says they're going to do on the tin. And somebody in the comments said, under promise, over deliver. Absolutely. That's what it's about. You know, I'm buying it to do this job. It does that job, but it does it better and with more elegance than I would have any reasonable expectation for it to do. Therefore, I am a fan of that product. And it can be something expensive or something cheap. It doesn't matter.
I'm going to bring
And
it
I
back
find-
to... Oh, God. Sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Alyssa.
I'm going to bring it back to two key ideas that I think keep coming up over and over again. Human beings do not fit on a number line. And if you leave the humanity out of your business, then you are going to struggle to really understand them and really understand where they're coming from and what they're looking for. So if you're just trying to package people into a single number, then you're never going to be able to understand them. Secondly, do something. Like that seems to be the theme that keeps coming up and up again. If you want to move forward, if you want to really understand your customers, you have to do something. And it's not enough to just say you're an 8, you're a 9, you're a 10, because those mean different things to different people. But are they doing something for you, renewing, promoting, whatever that may be?
If you want the
Alyssa,
thing, you got to do the thing. That's
Do
what
the
we say
thing.
on the show.
Along those lines of doing something, we've now determined that there's a potential for churn. What are some interventions?
There are some incredible people out there who are much more expert than me on this. So I'm going to speak to basically what I've learned from other thought leaders over the years. My role has always been to point out the problems, and then other people get to do the hard work of retaining them. But as simple as reaching out to them and saying, you know, what can we do to make this right? How many times have you had a bad experience with a company and they simply ask the question, what can we do to make this right? And then again, empower your people to actually do something about it if it's within the guidelines and the brand of your company. There was that story that went viral for several years ago about, I think it was Chewy was the brand, and someone's dog had passed away and they returned a box of toys outside of the return window. And instead of saying, hey, no, we're not going to take those toys or that food back, they took the return and they sent flowers. And so thinking about that story of, you know, that person, when they get another dog, they're going to go to Chewy to have the access to their toys or their dog food or their medications. They could have very easily said, hey, it's not within our policy. You're outside the return window. You know, sorry about that. Maybe you can sell it on Facebook Marketplace, right? No, instead they took it back and then they went the extra mile to send flowers. So I think that there's little things you can do, but it comes down to just genuinely caring about the customers that you serve within the guidelines that your company has empowered you to do so.
Listen, this has been great. How can we learn more? Where can people get in touch with you?
I am very active on LinkedIn. Come connect with me on LinkedIn. Come hang out with me. I love to talk to people. AlyssaNolte.com has all of the various projects that I'm working on. And I've had the pleasure of talking to many people on this call on my podcast called Taking Back Monday. So shameless plug for Rob and Tim who've been on the podcast, and go check out their episodes.
Absolutely. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of myself and the other panelists here, to our guest Alyssa, to the very active audience, thank you all for being a part of today's Digital Download, and we'll see you all next time.